with the current counter-offensive by Ukrainian forces in the southern and northern regions of the country continuing with seemingly little to no end in sight. The question on everybody's mind is, what next? Now we have already discussed the possible use of nuclear weapons and how to stop that from happening. What we really need to consider is what happens next with the conventional aspect of this war. But first, let's have a quick look at the current state of the Ukrainian counter-offensive. In the southern region, the focus of the grinding counter-offensive is unashamedly Kherson and liberating it so that the attack can continue down towards Crimea, thus isolating it and the Russian troops currently stationed there. We can expect further attacks on the Kerch Bridge to ensure that evacuation and reinforcement becomes impossible. The first attack has already had a significant effect on the Russian fuel situation in the south. So far, the results have been pretty spectacular, with more than 600 settlements wrested from Russian control, including 75 from the Kherson region alone, with 502 being liberated in the northern Kharkiv area of operations, 43 in Donetsk and 7 in Luhansk. Now obviously these figures come from the Ukrainian Ministry of Reintegration of the Temporary Occupied Territories and cannot be verified. In response to the unfolding situation and in an acceptance of the dire position they find themselves, Russian authorities in Kherson have asked their central government for help evacuating civilians. The government took the decision to organize assistance for the departure of residents of the region to other regions of the country, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Marat Kusnulin said on state television. Russian forces are likely attempting to consolidate a new front line west from the village of Milov, according to British intelligence. This area subsequently came under intense Ukrainian artillery bombardment on October 15 as forces in the Nikopol area changed the axis of attack towards Milov, with Berislav next on the menu. Civilians fleeing Kherson would obviously be another major propaganda blow to Russia's claim to have annexed around 15% of Ukraine's territory this month and incorporated an area the size of Portugal into Russia. To confirm this, authorities have called these evacuations humanitarian trips to lighten the psychological impact of the word evacuation. However, all of this would pale into comparison if Russian forces lost the city itself. In response to the assault, Russia has concentrated many of its best-trained troops to defend its grip on the regional capital, the only large Ukrainian city it has captured intact since its invasion in February and its only foothold on the Dnipro's west bank. Unfortunately for those forces, they can only be supplied across the river, which is several kilometers wide and has few crossings. So, they can expect significant hardships in the upcoming days and weeks. Heading north, you had the Kharkiv-based counteroffensive by the armed forces of Ukraine on Russian-occupied Ukrainian territory of Kharkiv Oblast, Donetsk Oblast, and Luhansk Oblast, was launched on the 6th of September 2022. By the 9th of September, this counteroffensive led to a breakthrough, and by the following day, the Institute for the Study of War said that Ukrainian forces had captured approximately 2,500 square kilometers, 970 square miles. Reuters reported that Russian forces had been forced to withdraw from their base at Izium, after being cut off by the capture of the key railway hub Kupiansk. On the 13th of September, Ukrainian forces established a bridgehead over the Oskil River near Borova. On the 17th of September, they claimed they had breached the Russian front line along the Oskil River and advanced to the left bank, and by the 25th of September, they had established at least 5 such bridgeheads on the east side of Oskil River. On the 1st of October, Ukrainian forces had captured the key city of Lyman. Understandably, the Russians have suffered severe losses, and the reasons for this are multiple and will form the basis for another video. But it's not been all roses for the Ukrainian side. Their losses have been significant and should not be ignored. Not only that, with limited manpower, they are forced to recycle the same troops, with periods of fighting getting extended, which in turn has led to combat fatigue. However, as they are fighting for their freedom, they have more will and determination than their counterparts who are only fighting out of fear for Putin or money. So, whilst the counteroffensive is going well, there is still this unshakable concern that the Russian bear is going to turn around and show its teeth. With the conscription drawing to an end in the next 2 weeks, in a sure sign that it has failed, and in order to accommodate next year's conscription, Western sources claim that only 14,000 of the 300,000 called-up troops have found their way to the front lines. It is assumed that most of these are reservists with previous experience, but there are also unconfirmed reports of conscripts getting taken straight to the front lines. The Russians have shown their ability to hurt the Ukrainians with their push into Bakhmut. This village sits roughly between the two axes of the Ukrainian counter-offensive, and has been the only positive situation for Putin and his army, thereby threatening the Ukrainian counterattack as it was designed to. Bakhmut was a town with an estimated population of 70,000 before the Russian invasion in February. That number has dwindled down to only those who cannot and/or refuse to leave, mostly the elderly and infirm. So, let's discuss that operation a bit more. On August 1, Russian forces launched massive ground attacks on settlements south and southeast of Bakhmut. Both the Russian Ministry of Defense and pro-Russian Telegram pages claimed that the Battle of Bakhmut had begun. The following day, Ukraine reported that Russian forces had ramped up airstrikes and shelling of the city, beginning a ground attack on the southeastern part of the city. On August 4, Wagner Group mercenaries managed to break through Ukrainian defenses and reach the eastern outskirts of Bakhmut. On August 10, Russian forces bombarded the central part of the city, killing 7 civilians and injuring 6 more. Many buildings were damaged in the strike. In the following days, Russian forces continued to push towards Bakhmut from the south. On September 20, Alexei Nagin, a commander in Wagner Group, was killed near Bakhmut. Wagner forces on the front lines are also started receiving replacements in the form of prisoners from Russia and allied breakaway states. On the 7th of October, pro-Russian separatists broke through Ukrainian positions and captured many villages on the outskirts of, while on the 10th of October the UK Defence Ministry claimed that Russian troops advanced closer to Bakhmut. Despite the successes, the Ukrainian forces have continued to defend against Russian attempts to break through and extend control over the Donbass region. It's clear that this area was chosen for renewed efforts by the Russians in an effort to reduce the effectiveness of the two Ukrainian counterattacks in the north and south. Despite having to give some ground, the Russians have largely been held there at great cost in men and machinery. This delaying tactic will hopefully see the counteroffensives continue, leaving the Russian position exposed and therefore untenable, allowing the horns of the counterattack to eventually sweep into a massive pincer movement, trapping those forces in place. Either way, dark history sees the conventional war in the Ukraine continuing to progress in favor of the Ukrainians. We do not believe that the Russian army has the men, machinery, but most importantly the will to win this war. It is for that reason that we believe, as mentioned in other videos, that Putin will be forced to use a tactical nuke.